because we're tired of being unemployed and underemployed. We are tired of only having to engage in sex work. We are tired of being your outreach people and your peer navigators making $10 to $12 an hour. We are tired of fighting for our country on foreign soil and then being told that we are no longer fit to serve. We are tired of our murders going without any justice and our murderers out there free. We want to be free. And that's why we are here.
Hello, everyone. And thank you all so very much for joining us on today. If you could please share this. Please tag someone that needs to watch this live. I'm so excited to be here, and I'm so excited to be before you, as well as my guest or as well. So for those of you that may not know who I am, my name is Dee Dee Waters. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. And I'm here on today to host a few discussions, some conversations with some amazing folks about this safety initiative. I kind of want to let you all know a little bit about the safety initiative from where it is that I got this whole initiative, right? The initiative came from violence outside of murder and violent attacks. And so when we talk about physical attacks and physical assaults, and when we talk about that, we must remember that what about the hospitals? What about the violence that takes place in hospital rooms or in clinics? What about the attempt to turn our lives around and be sober, right? What about the violent attacks that take place outside of murder, outside of abuse, outside of just violent physical attacks? I think that it's extremely important that we start to talk about those and figure out what can we do when we talk about safety from that perspective. It's hard enough to take the guns from folks. It's hard enough to take the knives from folks. It's hard enough to stop someone from doing what they're looking to do. But what we can do is we can start working on what safety looks like outside of violence from murders and from violent attacks, from physical violent attacks. And in my mind, what that looks like is the fact that violence takes place on trans bodies more often than what we talk about. Denied access to shelter, workplace discrimination, our human rights. A lot of times our human rights are being taken from us. And sadly, even after our human rights are being under attack, we're being murdered. And when people are murdering us, the defendant is actually going with a plea saying that they are pleading the trans panic defense. And so these are all problems. This is all violence that's taking place. And there are things that we can do about it. And hopefully within these conversations and discussions around a safety initiative, our goal is to figure out what does that look like for trans folks, for trans bodies, for non-binary bodies. What does safety look like outside of murder, outside of violent physical attacks? What does it look like whenever we're going somewhere and trying to receive treatment and care and being turned away? What does it look like whenever we're trying to find a place to sit there and start trying to be more sober and not do the things that we were doing previously, but all that we're getting is turned down or denied access to these should be accessible resources? So I think that on today, our conversation is going to be around healthcare. Luckily, we have a couple of folks that will be joining us, and if not, one of the individuals that will be joining us is going to talk about their experience and what it is that they're doing. Now, when we talk about healthcare, and in this conversation, we welcome you all to jump into the comments and let us know your thoughts, your views, even your experience. I've seen that someone has already said hello, so hello and thank you for joining us from wherever it is that you are. Also, I would like to give thanks to the National Trans Visibility March as they sponsored these conversations and discussions. Of course, it is asked of you all if you can join and or support October the 9th. You can join us in person or join virtually, but we definitely ask that you all continue to join, and that information will be provided. It was provided in the beginning of the video, and it will be provided again towards the end. So I believe that it's time that we go ahead and get started. And again, thank you all for joining us. And I have my guest on with me. I guess we're doing the natural thing today, huh?
That's what we're doing.
Hey, that's an amazing thing. I think it's beautiful. So if you don't mind introducing yourself and letting everyone know your pronouns.
Absolutely. Well, first, I would like to thank you, Dee Dee, just for having me on here. Thank you so much. My name is Marilyn Blackburn. My pronouns are she and her. I work for the organization here in Pittsburgh, serving the Allegheny County, Sisters PGH. I have a program through Sisters PGH called Grow to Succeed, which is a very vital program for the trans and non-binary community because it's based on the sobriety of drug and alcoholism, based off the AA steps.
Cool. And how long have you all been a program? How long have you all been in effect, in action?
Well, the organization itself, Sisters PGH, has been over a decade. Grow to Succeed is actually a new program. It's been here for about 2 years.
Okay, and again, it was called Grow to Succeed?
Grow to Succeed.
That's really, really cool. That's really, really cool. And so you say that this is a program. So this is a program within the organization. And what was the organization's name again?
Sisters PGH.
Sisters PGH. I'm almost certain I know about that organization. That's amazing. Congratulations on all the amazing things that you all have done as an organization. And a very big shout out to you. So when we talk about it's Grow to Succeed, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when we talk about Grow to Succeed, I know that right now on today, the topic is healthcare. And one of our other guests that was going to be on was had some issues specifically in healthcare. The reason why I wanted to make sure that we included you in this conversation is because this is a part of that care part, if that makes any sense, right? As well as followed by treatment. So I think that when we're talking about violence, right? Far too often we think about violence from a place of, oh, someone just attacked this person and hit them and beat them or killed them. But we don't think about the violence that takes place in other places, right? And so this poses a question to me of like, what made you decide to start this group or this program? What was it that made you decide to do that?
Well, I'm glad you asked that, Dee Dee. I'm actually in recovery myself. I celebrate 2.5 years clean and sober.
Congratulations. I'm sorry. That deserves an applause. Congratulations.
Thank you. And I just remember being out there in the street, you know, in my addiction, in my active addiction, and just not really having too many resources at all when it came to just specifically trans help. So I had experienced a lot of like discrimination in different rehabs. Rather, if they would try to put me with the males, they wouldn't even take me in because they're like, we don't know how to deal with this situation. So finally, I did get into a rehab after the many I had been to. You know, I had my moment of clarity, my rude awakening. I don't like to say rock bottom because there's so many of those. Mm-hmm. When I had my awakening, I had actually went into a rehab, and they were very trans friendly. They were. They put me with the females in the female unit. It wasn't so much of telling my business of, well, this is what she is. And a lot of rehabs that did that before, like saying, oh, well, you know, that used to be a man and stuff. Discrimination, which I think in the cis community, that's why there is a Grow to Succeed. It's good to like train the cis community on how to deal with folks like myself or yourself, you know, that are trans or non-binary coming into those spaces. But back to my experience, I got clean and sober. And I remember being in the rehab telling myself that, okay, this is it. I'm ready to stay clean. I'm ready to sustain my sobriety. I'm ready to be on this road of recovery. But what am I going to do with this recovery? Am I going to sit on this recovery, or am I going to do something different? Am I going to go out there and help folks like myself that look like me, speak like me, you know, in my community that needs me, that needs a voice? And that's exactly what I did when I got out of rehab. I said I wanted to set out there. I wanted to start a program for trans and non-binary folks. I was blessed by my higher power, which is God, to be blessed to this organization with Sisters PGH. They gave me an opportunity. The executive director had told me, we're really close. She said, you know what, Marilyn, I believe in you. You take your ideas and you run with them, and I will support you. And that's exactly what happened.
Mm-hmm. And that's beautiful. Like, that's really, really cool. And I definitely appreciate that. And the reason why I appreciate that is because I want to say this based upon what you just said. And then I'm going to go to a question that I got from that. But when we talk about violence and we talk about a safety initiative, right? The individual that you're speaking in reference of and this organization practice a method of safety. And in my mind, right? In my mind, what that looked like was they created what's called a safe space. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
And although it wasn't necessarily the organization's mission originally, right? But of course, that mission was to be involved with the sisters, with the trans sisters and the non-binary folks, and they did exactly that. And they created a space that was a safe space for you. And I want to appreciate and acknowledge that because that's one of those moments when we lead by example. So to that organization, I say, I think that that's really, really cool, and that means a lot. Now, what I want to go to is this question for you. So you made mention of going to I don't want to say multiple rehabs because I don't want to make it seem like you went to like it just sounded in my head. I was like,
it was multiple rehabs.
So if it was multiple rehabs, I think that my question to you is going to be in this way. So it's two parts. So when it comes down to the multiple rehabs, when you were at those other rehabs and those the situations that took place, like someone saying, "Oh, that used to be a man," or putting you in a space with nothing but other men, but with men, not other men, but with men, because if it was other, that would mean that you would have to be identified as so. So therefore, putting you in a space with men, right, with cis men, did that affect your sobriety is the first part to that question. And then the second part comes in when you went to this place that affirmed you. Was that where you found that moment of sobriety?
Yes, I could say yes, because the other rehabs that I mentioned that I went to, since we're talking about safety, I want to put it out there that it was not safe in a lot of the rehabs I went to. I went to a specific rehab. I remember it like it was yesterday. They had put me in with the females, but I had to sleep with the males, if that makes sense at all. And I remember somebody knocking at my door and trying to perform sexual actions with me. And it was very much not like, okay, well, do you want to do this? It was giving very much of, you're going to do this.
Right.
That makes sense?
It makes complete sense.
So, things happen that shouldn't have happened, in the rehabs. Certain things happened that should not have happened, that were not addressed. And when I did speak to staff about it, it was looked over. Or they looked at me as, oh, well, you're transgender. Most of y'all are sex workers anyway. This is what you like to do.
Right.
So that all goes back to discrimination, and it wasn't safe. It was not safe at all. The last rehab where I got myself together, I did not experience that. So it was really like a safe haven for me, where I got to really sit there and think about what caused me to use, why I used, what addiction really was, what I want to do with my life. As far as like when I say giving back to the community, I really got to sit and think like, is this something I could do? But I had to get myself in order first, mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, together. And that's what I did. I sat there for like 3.5 months and I got myself together. There was no type of discrimination. I actually came out and was like, hey, I'm trans. Because it was like I was so traumatized, I guess, from the other rehabs. It was like before anybody tries to clock me, you know what I mean? I might as well get my microphone and I might as well sing it, right? So that's what I did. I let everyone know, well, you know what, I'm a trans woman. I'm proud of who I am. That was sort of like I guess a trauma response, really. It's putting myself out there, and it was bravery, but a trauma response out of fear of, well, if someone else was to find out, were they going to attack me? What would hate me? In that rehab, definitely when there's a lot of female staff there that wouldn't be able to defend you. So, absolutely. Yeah, I guess that's my answer.
No, it makes a lot of sense. And the reason why I asked that question is because for those that are watching that are not, that don't have the trans experience or the non-binary experience. So one of the things that Marilyn had said was clocked. clocked your T. That is, do you want to explain, or would you like for me to?
You can explain. We can both explain if you want.
Yeah. So back in the Gap, whenever I started my transition, when I began my transition years ago, we used to say making sure that people didn't clock the T. And what clock the T was that they would be able to figure out that you were trans, or identify that you were trans, or not the gender which you're representing at that moment. That was what clocking the T was. And when we would say clock the T, sometimes it would be clocking of the T, meaning that somebody was going to probably say something like overreact. So it was like, girl, they clocking, meaning like they getting it, they trying it. And in that way, that's how it was for me.
That's perfect example. My experiencing with clocking in a rehab, I could say being with females, hanging with them, talking to them knowing, and say, because when you're in rehab, if you're not really serious, and which at first when I was in rehab the first time, I wasn't really serious. I was just like, oh, I need a break, from the addiction. I wasn't really ready. It was about the boys, right? It was about the guys in rehab. Let's get a rehab boyfriend, that's
do this together.
So a clock to me was very much of, he's talking to me 1 minute, and then next thing you know, the girls you were hanging out with are looking at him weird, and then he's not talking to you anymore. And you're like, oh, they talked to me.
Mm-hmm. Same. Yep. So when we look at, I think that the reason why I asked that question to you was extremely important, because people that are not that don't live the experience of being trans or non-binary, many of them pose certain questions, right? So just like when you said, you would be like, well, this is what took place, and they said, oh, well, you're trans, and many of you all are in sex work. So the part of the problem is that a lot of times, and trauma responses, a lot of times whenever we're in certain spaces where we're looking and seeking care and or treatment, far too often that violence takes place, right? And that violence a lot of times serves as a huge distraction from what it is that we're looking to do, from what we're looking to achieve. So when we talk about sobriety, and we talk about survival sex work, or sex work period, and we talk about trans people, and I'm gonna take it to a whole nother place from the perspective of a Black trans woman, because I identify as a Black woman of trans experience. And so with that in mind, what that means to me is that whenever I'm somewhere and I'm trying to practice sobriety, or even not do sex work, a lot of times, far too often, these two things are connected a lot of times, right? And a lot of times, not only that, but my sister Regina, she has a conversation that they hold about STDs, STIs, and drugs, right? And so when we look at that conversation, whenever they're having that conversation, one of the things that we notice is a lot of the people that are having that conversation were in survival sex work, and there was a huge addiction that was there, right? And whenever they were trying to kick the addiction to the drugs, there was also this addiction to the sex work that had also developed. And so when we talk about sobriety and people trying to receive treatment or receive care, that violence that takes place is the thing that keeps people on the streets. It keeps putting people in danger, specifically trans people, because there's no safety that's there. And when I asked you that question, I wanted to get the point of, when you were in other places and you were not in a safer space, you were not able to achieve what it was that you were looking to achieve. You see? And now that you are back, now that you're back where you are, it feels different when you go somewhere and you are affirmed, right? I believe that was a question that came up.
You see me.
And I think it was, what led you to go to rehab?
What led me to go to rehab? Was there a triggering moment? What led me to go to rehab? I didn't want to die.
Interesting.
I didn't want to die. There's different degrees to addiction. There's different degrees to being an addict. You have, it speaks about it. I read many books on addiction. I talk to my clients about it. I was the type of addict that went hard, went real hard. It was no coming back. What led me to go to rehab? I have 2 kids, and they needed me, but I can't really say that's the reason I went for myself. But there is a point in my life where me being a trans woman, I had believed that my kids did not need me because that wasn't a father. That was, that's not how I grew up or was raised. So that I was better off either away from them or dead. So I guess when I did have, like I mentioned earlier, a moment of clarity, I had seen the mother of my kids, grandmother, and she said my kids were asking about me. That kind of woke me up, was like, what am I doing? They do love me. What am I doing with my life? I started looking at the talents that I have, that God has gifted me with, that I was not using. My voice, not using the voice, because I talk pretty loud. So I'm like, God gave me this loud voice for a reason. That's what let me go to rehab. I had hit a rock bottom. I couldn't deal with it anymore. I didn't want to die. I didn't want to be a memory in that type of way. I had to learn to love myself.
That's interesting that you say that. And I feel like, so again, me speaking from my own perspective and experience, right? So for me, my growing up Black, I wasn't taught about a lot of mental health stuff, right? So like I wasn't brought up learning about mental health. By the time I was in middle school, it seemed like everybody was bipolar, and it was a self-diagnosis that a lot of people were doing in Black and brown communities, but again, specifically the Black communities, right? And I remember, I feel like there's this moment when we want that treatment, that care, when we decide that we want it, right? And so it's so funny because when I heard you saying what you were saying, I was literally thinking about my experience, right? And so I didn't have a huge drug addiction, right? I didn't have a huge drinking addiction. I had an addiction to survival sex work. And after it became survival sex work and it was just sex work, it was an addiction to it. I had an addiction to the power. I had the addiction to the control of everything. Like I had that addiction to the money. And I remember my father. And it's so funny how some people just literally by posing a question or letting us know something, again, that care moment, right? Mm-hmm. It's so funny how they can change our lives, because my father literally asked me what type of woman was I portraying. And ever since that day, it made me look at everything differently. He didn't tell me I had to do nothing different. He didn't say what I needed to do. He literally posed a question to me that was a really good question that made me start to think about things, and then made me start to seek a job, right? And even when going to go after a job, I was denied jobs. I would get the job, and the second that they would be like, oh, you never did bring in your ID, because girl, I was trying to be quick and not show it to them. Like all of these things were happening. And so the reason why I literally wanted to talk about safety with the premises of violence against our bodies and what that looked like, it was because it's extremely important that we are reminded that violence is not just people murdering us. It's not just people putting their hands on us. When I remember one time my brother was in an argument with his lover, and he said, "This is verbal abuse." And I was like, child, ain't no such thing. And I now know. So, with that in mind, it really makes me still stay with the whole sobriety, right? Mm-hmm. Now, from your experience, do you believe that cis hetero folk, do you believe that their percentages of completing or accomplishing sobriety at some point, do you believe that that they have a higher percentage in accomplishing that because of the access to those resources as cis folks, right, compared to trans people? Do you believe that there's any balance or imbalance in the difference of those?
That's actually a bomb question, Didi. That is a deep question. And you have to kind of like give the honest, brutal truth to that question. Yes. Mm. Yes, 1,000 times. Why? Because in the trans community, is non-binary community, it's sobriety isn't really even looked at, really. It's just like when it comes to the trans world, it goes with sex work, it goes with addiction, all of that. And it's not looked at as like, well, this is a problem, because you have your cisgender folks, you have your trans folks, and it's just treated so much differently because you get so many folks like myself that tried to go into a rehab and was not successful. I was able to be successful, but it doesn't happen like that. When you go to rehab, you don't really see too many trans folks in rehabs. And if you do, or you hear about it, it's a horrible experience. So they have they have more of an opportunity to get clean and sober because they feel like they're with each other. They're one of one kind.
Community.
Absolutely.
I think that's the thing. And I think that whenever I spoke with you, so I wound up a young lady, I don't know if she's watching. I hope she's not. She was a little upset with me. I wind up sending her into a rehab. She gave me permission over her. I did everything the way it was supposed to. I just didn't tell her it was a rehab. But she was grateful afterwards. Anyway, I've done this with her 2 times before, if that makes sense. And each time in doing so, the very first one was very traumatic for her. They wind up throwing her in this room. And she felt more like she was incarcerated in jail than she was somewhere to receive help, treatment, and or care. And so it's so interesting that you're saying the things that you're saying, because that's what made me cling to you so much, because I've had so many interactions with so many folks who had certain addictions that were causing them to go down certain paths. But as trans folks, they didn't feel safe in certain spaces. I also look at it from the perspective of this. Far too often, whenever I've met folks that had some type of an addiction, a substance addiction or a drinking addiction, far too often, they always feel like everyone is against them when it comes down to trans folks that try to go and access this care and treatment. Mm-hmm. And so that's the reason why, like, whenever you and I first met and I like seeing what you were doing, I was like, oh, this is bomb, because I've had so many folks that are unable to be able to access this type of service that are trans and or gender non-conforming or non-binary, right? And so it's like, to see that this service is there is extremely important. I want to make sure that I let you know that it is extremely important. My brother Lewis Mitchell, he is a person who has been sober for, years now. And even within that, when we talk about community, I'm gonna come to that question in just a second. When we talk about community, one of the most interesting things is that even whenever I'm around him, if I'm drinking, I'll sit there and drink, and I apologize, right? But he's like, no, I'm good in my sobriety, I'm good in my journey, this is okay. But we as a community of folks, some of us, we use some of these things to cope, right? And we don't see it as an addiction. And so I think that I really want to touch bases from you, to hear from you, a person who's sober, who's going through your journey right now. What can we as other trans people, as your community, as your tribe, what can we do when we come around people like yourself that are in this journey of sobriety? What suggestions do you think that you have for people like myself that may come up in there and be like, hey, child, have me a whole little glass of whiskey or a whole glass of wine or even a bottle, and offer it to you? And, like, how do you think that we can be better as comrades for you all?
Well, shout out to Lewis. Lewis was part of one of my panels.
Oh, cool.
He was. It was the We Do Recover panel. Amazing person. So if I'm hearing your question right, so as far as like what would make someone like myself that's in recovery more comfortable as far as being around us?
Yeah. So say for instance, I was there and, and we having a little kickback, and you come over to the kickback, right? What would make you feel more comfortable as a person who's going through your journey of sobriety?
I guess my answer would be for that would to ask the person where they're at with their recovery before like pulling out any drinks or anything like that. Does that kind of answer the question? Like without pulling out any type of, there's medical marijuana, any of that, I would definitely ask the person in recovery, hey, where are you with your recovery? Are you comfortable with me drinking? Or, I might smoke a blunt or something like that. Is this going to trigger you?
Okay. I appreciate that.
More of a respectful way before you do it. Because you don't know, even like the folks that have like time clean, like myself or like Lewis, we as recovering addicts could have, I'm gonna speak for myself, can have days where it's like, this ain't a good day. You know, I'm human. This isn't a good day for me. And where me being around my friends that might drink sometimes, maybe I could be around them sometimes, but maybe it's a day that I can't be around them. I'm just like in my feelings, you know, and like they pull out a bottle that could trigger me. So it's good to just find out for like your friends that are in recovery to always ask them, you know, hey, where you at? Where you at today? You know, is it cool? Like, all right, and just moving forward with that.
Okay, so I appreciate that. And then I'm gonna ask another question, and I want to see what that question was that came up in the comments. So this question now is for from you. This is you. I want for you to let me know because again, when we talk about violence and safety, I want us to look at it from a different perspective because I wouldn't want you to come to my event and me do a violent act towards you by popping a bottle. Does that make sense? Especially if I'm aware of you in your journey in sobriety. So that's if I'm aware. What about when people are not aware? What would you suggest to a trans person that's watching this, or a non-binary person or gender non-conforming person that may be watching this right now, and they're like, you know what? I want to start my journey in sobriety, or they already have, and they just don't know how to say it to friends, because you and I both know what it's like to be around a group of people and they be like, oh, here girl, and you be like, nah, I'm good. They be like, oh, so you funny now. What is your suggestion to those trans people? Because again, we're trying to implement safety. So what safety or how do you think that they should go into it, or do they not go into it? I think that I just want to hear from you.
I think if you're thinking about getting clean and sober, if you surround yourself around a lot of friends that drink and that get high, I think the first step would be admitting that you're not exactly should be in that situation anymore, that, you know, that you're powerless, and that, you know, that situation is definitely unmanageable, which is actually the first step, is powerlessness. And if you're powerlessness over that, you know, situation, and you have a lot of friends that are doing that, I would definitely say stay away from them, and to really just tell them why. Just be honest. If they're your close friends and they really care about you and they really love you this way that they say they do, then they'll understand that you're making a life long-term change. You're doing it to better yourself. You know, you're doing it to better yourself, and you know, you're living your way a safer way so you can thrive, so you can succeed. You want to grow.
Right. No, and I appreciate that, and I thank you. And before we get off of here, what I want to make sure that we do is I want to make sure that we inform people of how they're able to find you, follow you, support you and your group and the organization, okay? So there was a comment that came up, and I read the comment. It was they said that I think talking about addiction in the trans community is vital for us to acknowledge, so that those of us that deal with addiction can have a chance to live a more conscious and fulfilling life. I will say that I agree. I definitely agree. I think that this is a conversation that is definitely needed, and this is the reason why I wanted to make sure that I included this conversation in this, because sometimes it's the smallest things that many of us don't know about. And what I'm almost certain of is, I wanted to bring this up when we talk about the whole idea of sobriety, right? When we talk about the idea of sobriety, I want to take a moment just to again, because I'm a black woman of trans experience. I want to speak for my group of people, because when we speak about us, everyone can also be able to gain from it, is my hope. But from my lived experience, in my mind, I believe that whenever we go and seek care and or treatment for sobriety, I believe that when we go and when we take that initiative and take that step, I believe that far too often the people that are looking to provide that treatment, provide that care, they connect that sex work situation together. Does that make sense? And I believe that when they connect that sex work situation together, this is the reason why I think that you and what you're doing is so important, because you can still do survival sex work and work on your sobriety to the addiction that you're trying to break from or shake, right? And I believe that far too often these programs feel like if you're doing this, you can't do it. And they don't understand that for some people, this is a way of life in order to survive. And I think that that's really, really cool. So with your program, do you believe that whenever it comes down to sobriety, that you meet people where they are, or do you tell them where they need to be?
Oh no. I definitely am very, very open and I don't judge anybody. Rather, if you're in active addiction, if you're doing sex work, if you're not doing sex work, the whole point of the program is for you to grow to succeed. If you're doing sex work, you want to get out of drugs, you want to get out of that lifestyle, well, let's grow to succeed. Let's see, let's lay everything on the table. Let's see what we can do to get out of this sex work. Let's learn why you're using. Let's get all the resources you can get out of this program that you can go ahead and thrive and you don't have to do sex work anymore. But I would never judge anyone. That's no.
Right. But do you think that that is one of the things that takes place in a lot of the sobriety spaces? If a person shares that they're in sex work, that it's kind of like frowned upon.
Yeah, because it's sort of like definitely even if you get a sponsor, sometimes you might have a sponsor, but oh no, you shouldn't be doing that. Rather than instead of coming at that person like, oh no, you shouldn't be doing that. Let's talk about, well, why you do that. And do you enjoy doing that? Is there a way that you think that we could get you out of doing that and doing something better? Maybe getting a better job that pays better and not have to put yourself in a situation where you got to worry about STDs, STIs, drugs, and jail time.
Funny you brought up jail. So since you brought up jail, I don't want you to have to go too deep into whatever it is that you don't want, because it is a privilege for people first to see your face on the screen and secondly to hear your story. Okay, so I'm going to speak on my own behalf, and if you would like to share as well, I'd appreciate it. That's fine. So I look at it from when I was incarcerated. I really haven't. Thank you. I really haven't done like hard time, right? But I've done my time, my share of county jail, and so. In jail, when you were speaking about rehab, it took me to jail, right? It took me to jail. It took me to solitary confinement. It took me to what's the other one? They just put you with everybody. And so it made me think about those two options, right? And it makes me again talk about this violence and safety stuff, right? So at one point in time, whenever I went to jail, I remember they put me in the tank with everybody, right? They called it the gay tank, and it was nothing but male. I guess assigned at birth male folks in there, because I'm not gonna say cis. They was assigned at birth male folks in there, and so I remember while I was in there, the violence that took place against me and how my safety was put in danger because I was put in there, right? Mm-hmm. And it's so crazy because I just remember like, oh my goodness, like I'm in jail, and you would think that because I'm in jail, I'm somewhere where I shouldn't have to worry too much about my safety, but I do. Not only do I have to worry about my safety, but it's like y'all threw me in the lion's den. Girl, I'm walking up in there with this hair. I said, yes, I'm feeling it. And girl, I looked up, I was like, oh, that man was like, you're gonna be mine. And again, like, what did that look like? The people that were the police officers, they were violent. They attacked me, because I didn't do what they said to do. And it wasn't nothing that I could do. You said, get up, I get up. Why are you up? So the reason why I'm bringing this up even is because, again, this is a part of that safety part, right? And a lot of times when we have people that are dealing with sobriety or addictions, far too often we find ourselves incarcerated. Mm-hmm. So this leads me to this question. When it comes down to safety, right, and violent acts that take place on trans bodies, in your experience, do you believe that? So let me do it this way. So when it comes down to sobriety and a person being in certain spaces, do you believe that those spaces affect them and their sobriety?
Talking on jail?
Yeah, jail or out of jail.
I think jail definitely has a huge impact on folks. It really does. But it's really, to be honest with you, my personal opinion, jail can either be a curse or a blessing. Mm-hmm. And it could save your life. Now, how they treat you in the jail is not safe. Right. It's definitely how they will put a trans person in, a trans woman and with men, or a trans man and with women, or no, trans men and with the women, and they'll put the trans women and with the men. That's not safe, and it wasn't really safe whenever I went to jail either. I remember, being in the shower and a guy peeking over and say, "Oh, look at those,"
Mm-hmm.
that was triggering to me because I already experienced stuff out there in the streets or whatever, as far as like, harassment and everything. So it was real triggering. And you can't tell nobody, because if you tell somebody you're a snitch, and we all know, you can watch a movie and just know what happens if you snitch on someone in jail. So
Snitches get stitches.
there really wasn't no safety for me. The only blessing I got out of jail was the fact that I had detoxed off of Suboxone. So,
True.
I sat in that cell and I just sat there.
And see, I think that my purpose behind that is because it's so many institutions that we find ourselves in, and violence takes place on our bodies, right? Even when we talk about school, even when we talk about furthering our education, there's violence that sometimes takes place on our bodies, mentally, physically, sometimes even. And it's like, how do we go about doing it? So we are at 41 after. I do want to make sure I let everyone know, first and foremost, thank you all for staying with us for all this time as we had our conversation. And to those of you who have commented, thank you for commenting. For those of you who have questions or comments, I definitely ask that you go ahead and put them in. Probably in about the next 5 minutes or so, we're going to go to Q&A and be able to answer a lot of you all's questions if you all have them, and then we'll go into closing. But I think that so often when we talk about sobriety, specifically with trans people, it makes me feel some kind of way because I feel like the access to resources is not there. And another reason why I wanted you on today was because I wanted people to know about this national resource that's actually available to them. And it's what you got going. And I think that that's super important. So if you don't mind, I'm gonna have you do it again. But for right now, just to please me at this time, let us know the name of your group again and the organization that is supporting you.
Again, my name is Marilyn Blackburn. My pronouns are she and her. My organization is Sisters PGH. That's who I work for. The program that I run through Sisters PGH is called Grow to Succeed. How to get to Grow to Succeed? You can go to www.sisterspgh.org. Click on programs and you'll see Grow to Succeed, and you can register there. It'll give you a link. You can join my groups that I hold every other Sunday. Also, it'll let you know the resources that I provide. If you're not in Allegheny County and you can't do a one-on-one with me, we can figure something out. I can just do a virtual, one-on-one session, and we can break it down and see what's going on in your life. And let's start doing some step work. That's important. Let's start doing some step work. Also, follow me on Facebook. You can go to my Facebook page, Grow to Succeed. Just look it up. It's on for groups. And go ahead and join. Check me out.
I think that's really, really cool. I'm definitely going to make sure that I introduce this to a lot of people. I see that we were asked if we could do that, the website one more time, a little bit slower, please.
That's www.sisterspgh.org. Go on to programs and click on Grow to Succeed.
All right. So that's.
Did you want the Facebook one more time?
I think they have the Facebook. I think that they wanted to make sure that we were able to give the website.
Okay.
So that's appreciated. And it looks like it's down there now, sisterspgh.org.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So you all can go to that website that you see there. The purpose for me making sure that this was to everyone and so that many of you all could see it, because when we talk about a national trans visibility march, a march where we are being visible and being present, we must be mindful of a lot of things. When we talk about healthcare, there's this part that's in healthcare, which is the word care. There's this thought that comes with healthcare, which is treatment. That's a part of the care. And so when we look at these things, it's important for us to be mindful of all of this. Far too often, trauma plays a huge role in many of our lives, which causes us to have to go and seek health care, causes us sometimes to turn to things that we wind up getting addicted to, and we just can't shake it without a little bit of help. There's so many things that take place in our lives, and it's important for us to start leading in that and start saying what it is that we need. And in my mind, I felt like this was one of the few things that are extremely important and can really help lead and guide a person of our lived experience to be able to see brighter days. Ain't nobody worried about better days because, baby, we don't even know what better days look like, okay? So let me say that from my own experience. But brighter days, we know what those look like. Okay, we know what those brighter days look like, and those are things that are achievable. And I want to say to you that I appreciate the fact that you did something that not only is changing your life, but the lives of many others that are not only in your area, but on a national level. And for that, I applaud and appreciate you. The reason why I wanted you here, because I wanted to show other trans folk, gender non-conforming folk, non-binary folk, people that are watching this live, that trans people are living, baby. We are living, we are thriving. We are no longer sitting there asking, can you let us in? We are cracking the door open, honey, and our sister comes behind us and kick it in. Our brother stands there with us. Our non-binary sibling is around us. We are no longer statistics. We are now making up the demographics that cover this place that we call America. And so it's important for us to know that whenever we see things that we don't like, whenever access to resources are not available to us, whenever things are just not there, one person said, baby, we build the tables. How about, guess what? We don't even need the table no more. And I want to applaud you for doing that because it's extremely important.
Thank you.
No, thank you. This is so important because a lot of people forget that many of us are addicts and we don't even know it. We just what they call it functioning addicts. So, you know, I really, really applaud you. I appreciate you for being here. I want to go ahead and make sure that we respect everyone and open up some questions if they would like to ask. I'm going to see if anyone has any Oh, okay. Yeah, sure. I'm definitely going to do that. But I want to see if anyone happens to have any questions first. And as we prepare to close and to leave, I'm going to ask you if you can give us 3 takeaways. But let's see if we have any questions first. And if not, then we will go into your 3 takeaways. I'll do a little bit of something for our closing, and then we'll see if anyone has any questions by then.
Okay.
All right. So let's give some folks a second to type in the comment section what their questions are or their comments. And then also, while we're doing that, think about your 3 takeaway questions.
Oh, I see something on the side. Oh, it's popping up on the side now.
Yes. So what's popping up on the side is letting you know what's in the chat. Okay. So if there were some comments that were there, let's bring those comments up and let's talk about them if they're there.
So I see someone that asked, do you want me to play the video again at the end?
So that's our chat. That's the chat that's with us. You'll see one that says comments. So they do this. So what we do is we sit here and we talk. We let them do the work.
Okay.
That's how we do that. We let them do the work. This is our chance to talk. We ain't got to do the work today. We off right now.
Okay.
But I mean, I really, really am glad that we were able to have this conversation. I think that far too often when we think about people who are addicts or have an addiction, we just think of certain types of folks. And I think that it's so important that we, that we embrace and that we show people like yourself that have overcome this journey, that we talk about people like Lewis, because it's important for people to see us. So let's see. Oh, okay.
Out there that survived the experience, that has lived the experience, survived it, and that sobriety, I'll leave that for the closeouts.
No, hey, that's what I'm talking about, because guess what, honey? You are not only surviving, you are thriving, and it is beautiful, and I appreciate it. And I want to let you know something else too. Thank you for being there for your children. You know what I'm saying? See, sometimes we just got to look at stuff a little bit differently, honey. I remember my little brother told me, he said, well, I didn't have a big brother to tell me what to do. He said, but I gained a big sister that got on my butt about everything. You know what I'm saying? And I didn't think that was possible. So thank you for doing that. Bring that comment back up, please. Let's go ahead and look at this comment. I'm just going to read this to you. I read it while we were talking. And also, if you all look at the bottom, you'll see it says the nationaltransmarch.com. You can go there and find out more information about the march that'll be taking place October the 9th. So the comment says, it makes me sad that those of us that are dealing with addictions is because of a hostile environment. That is very true. But I hope that our siblings out there can take control in whatever circumstances they're in. Now, I think that really makes a lot of sense. And I think that when we talk about that when we're dealing with addictions in hostile environments, I think that one of the things is how do we help get people out of hostile environments, right? And then I think that also when we talk about hostile environments, I think that we also have to be real about stuff, right? So again, safety. right? Safety initiative, violence, right? So sometimes we do our own violent acts, which is the reason why I asked you earlier about, hey, if you come to my kickback, what should I do as a person who knows that you're in your journey? Because what winds up happening is we wind up doing violent stuff too. We wind up putting our people in just the most horrible situations, right? You know, you needed a place to stay, and I said, yeah, you can stay with me. But the whole time, all I did was smoke weed, left coke on the table, kept alcohol all over the place. That is a hostile environment, and sometimes we don't know that. So I think that right. And I want to encourage many of us. I want to encourage many of us that when we think about these types of situations, that we bring them up. And that not only that, but when we talked earlier about meeting people where they are, sometimes it's a hostile situation whenever I look at you and say, girl, you need to kick that addiction. You're going to kick that addiction. You're not coming around me with that. That is a hostile situation. That is also a part of that violence, right? Mm-hmm. So when we talk about this safety initiative, I'm hoping that the goal here is for us to shine more light on the fact that we don't need to just be screaming whenever somebody comes and jumps us and it's one of them or 10 of them, right? Mm-hmm. We don't need to just be screaming whenever somebody comes and murders our sister, our brother, our sibling, right? We need to be screaming whenever we are going and we trying to go and sit inside the clinic. And when we sit in that clinic to get ready to get that STD test or that HIV test, and we know that we out here having unprotected sex with whoever may come around, and they sit there, I'm sitting there, my name is Jasmine, and they holler out Jonathan, I'm not going to get up.
That's exactly what they do. I remember having an experience like that, being called by my legal name. I would be somewhere and they would know specifically because I would tell you I'm a trans woman. And then here comes the doctor screaming, blood. And I'm like, right. Are you serious?
Violence.
So that's clock, like we talked about
earlier. Right. And see, and again, this is so whenever we talk about a safety initiative, right? There's nothing safer. There's no need for safety outside of that. That is a huge need for safety right then and there, you know. And see, so for me, when we talk about safety, we can't go and take guns out of people's hands and think that they won't cut our throats. Right. We can't go and take guns and knives and don't think that they will hang us and lynch us. Does this make sense? But what we can do is we can start pushing hospitals to do what they're supposed to do, and healthcare. We can start pushing places that offer sobriety services to make sure that it's more trans and non-binary inclusive. We can start forcing policy writers, people that are lawmakers, to sit there and say, you know what, nah, baby, this ain't working for me. I am your constituent. You get what I'm saying? These are things that we can have some power in and be able to do. And in this safety initiative, that is the goal. It's not the goal to stop having people be murdered, because that is out of our control. But what we can't control, one of the things that we can contribute to, let me say it that way, is to help get people to end, to put a ban on the trans panic defense, right? We can look forward to try to get them to stop trying to put all these bans against trans athletes. There's so much that we can do. And I really, really want to make sure that when we talk about the safety initiative, that people get that from it. So I really, really appreciate it.
For like training for cis folks to know that, okay, because we can laugh about a clock all day, but at the end of the day, the seriousness of what a clock can lead to is death. Because if someone is to be clocked in a doctor's office, in a rehab, in a jail, and they find out who you are and find out your, I don't like to say your sexual orientation, but your sexual identity.
Gender identity.
Gender identity.
And
once they find that out, it's like, now if someone is not okay with trans folks, if they like totally dislike, there are a lot of folks that dislike us and that will kill us just because we're trans. Yeah. And if you don't know, and if a doctor goes ahead and puts that out there or something like that happens and they call the wrong name, if there's somebody in that office that hears that, and that triggers their mind to, oh, I don't like those people, you know, because they call us those people. When we leave the doctor's office, we're bound to get beat up, shot, jumped, kidnapped, whatever.
Harassed. Anything. Absolutely. You're absolutely right. And I really, really appreciate that. And we're getting ready to wrap up. So I'm going to come back to your three things that you would like to leave with folks. And then after that, I'm going to close us out. But before then, I thank you so much. So if you don't mind letting us know those three thoughts that you have.
I just want to put it out there that if you are struggling with addiction, if you're trans or non-binary, that you can do it. You can do it. You can just make that first step that you're not alone. If I can do it, you can do it. I've lived the experience. I've been there. I've done that. I've sold myself. I've done sex work. I've stolen as far as boosting. I've panhandled. I've done it all. There's pretty much nothing I haven't done. So you're not alone and you can do it. My second thing is reach out. Don't be afraid to reach out. Making that first step to reach out and seeking that help can save your life. Knowing that you're not alone and there's a space for trans and non-binary folks like yourself, that you can come and just message me, a simple message, or go ahead to the Sisters PGH site and go to programs and click on Grow to Succeed and register for these groups. I'm not hard to find, Marilyn Blackburn. So look me up, find me, message me, and I will be there. It don't matter what time. I stay up late anyway. So message me, reach out, definitely reach out. And the third thing I would have to say is grow. Just grow. Grow. If you're not ready, just grow. Just grow. Think, evaluate your life, and just grow, because anyone out there struggling with this disease of addiction, it's serious. You can succeed in life. You can grow and push. Just keep pushing. And it's one day at a time, just for today. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. And I really, really appreciate you. And I want you to stay on screen with me, if you don't mind, as I get ready to do our closing. So first and foremost, I would like to take a moment of reflection, just to be able to hold space for a trans individual who was murdered recently. I posted about it on my Facebook page. The individual's name was Pooh. They went by Pooh and used they, them pronouns is what I'm finding out. And all of this is still in question, but this is still a fresh murder. So as a national trans visibility march, we talk about visibility. This is something that has taken place. So I just ask that we take a moment of reflection and just breathe one good time. That's it. That's all I'm gonna ask y'all for. Thank you for that. Also, I ask that you all join me on tomorrow. Tomorrow, we will be here, same time, same place. I ask that you join me tomorrow as we talk about policy. Again, when we talk about violence and we talk about the safety initiative, we want to make sure that we talk about the things that we can actually do certain things about, things that we can have some type of action that can be plausible, right? So hopefully you all are available to join us on tomorrow. I will have an amazing guest with me who is Emmett Schelling, and we will be talking about policy and what takes place against trans bodies as we talk about violence with policy. One of the main things that we want to suggest to everyone is that we ban the trans panic defense. Ban the trans panic defense. I hope that you all are able to join me on tomorrow as we have this conversation. Again, to the Trans National Visibility March. The National Trans Visibility March, excuse me. Thank you for having us. Thank you for allowing me to be here. Thank you for creating this space, this safe space, so that we can talk more about a safety initiative within the trans community and the non-binary folks. Thank you so much for having me. Again, I'm Dee Dee Waters, and this is my guest,
Marilyn Blackburn. Thank you.
See y'all soon.
Because we're tired of being unemployed and underemployed. We are tired of only having to engage in sex work. We are tired of being your outreach people and your peer navigators making $10 to $12 an hour. We are tired of fighting for for our country on foreign soil and then being told that we are no longer fit to serve. We are tired of our murders going without any justice and our murderers out there free. We want to be free. And that's why we are here.